Hey, this is the third little video describing the third trend as described by sociology of religion and American culture when it comes to religion. We've talked about secularization, we've talked about privatization, and now we're going to talk a little bit about pluralism. And your question of the week is actually on this last topic. What is pluralism? Well, here's the definition we'll be using for the duration of the class, and this definition will be actually on the PowerPoints that are attached to this week as well. But the definition I want us to use is this. Pluralism is a state in which cultural subgroups, that is religious and or ethnic groups, are given equal social standing. No single group holds a monopoly in the definition of beliefs, values, and practices. So again, as we're watching American culture change, there used to be a group that was basically the kind of cultural gatekeepers. And they had a monopoly of kind of defining for all of us collectively what we believed and what we thought and what our values were. And if you think about American culture, if any of you have ever seen the musical Hamilton, where it's describing our founding fathers, what's interesting is that the person who wrote that is, I think, Hispanic. His cast was filled with all kinds of ethnic groups. And I think it was a way of him kind of drawing our attention to the fact that our culture largely has changed. But the reality of it is if you were going to cast that play, all those people would have been white. And our founding fathers were men. And they were Christians. And so those who defined who and what we were as Americans and what we were thinking and what we valued largely were old, white, Christian men. Well, that's changed quite a bit, even in the last 25 or 30 years. If you look at just this last election, especially in the Democratic Party, there is a wide swath of ethnicities, of religions, of worldview captured there. Even though there's been kind of power held in the last couple years by Republicans, if you look about how America is changing, and if you see the Republican Party largely as white and almost invariably male, the demographic is shrinking, that is white and male, and really the Democratic is more representative of how America is changing. If you were to look at their, when they do their, the Democratic National Convention, the people they choose to speak, the people they put in front, the Democratic Party has done a great job in trying to represent Americans. So you have people who are LGBTQ speaking. You have people who are, I remember during the campaign before this one, there was a person, they had a Hispanic, a lesbian, and a person in a wheelchair, like back-to-back speakers. And I thought to myself, they're doing this on purpose. They're choosing this group of people on purpose because they're trying to recognize the trend that's changing. So think for example about the controversy around the bathrooms at Starbucks, the gender neutral bathrooms at Starbucks, right? So much hubbub about that, right? Well, what was happening there? Well, those companies realized that there were some awkward moments for a very, very small percentage of the population who, when it came to going to the bathroom, the choices weren't so clear as to which bathrooms they should use for them. And so the idea is we're going to respect and honor this minority of people, even if it's against kind of the majority of people. We want their rights to be honored in the same way. This is a trend of pluralization. The culture is beginning to pay more and more and more attention to even those people that are on the margins or on the outside, so that there's a growing equality. And collectively, more and more people get to say who we are and how we think and what our policies should be and what our laws should be. This is a trend of pluralism. So pluralism can be religious, like there are a number of religions that they all have to be honored and respected in a culture, right? So you think about why there's such a hubbub about in your lifetime, before you were born, typically at any ceremony, a public ceremony, a high school graduation, a football game, you might have a Christian prayer. Well, they don't have Christian prayers at these things anymore in public schools. Why not? Well, because that Christian prayer may not represent everybody in the crowd. There may be Sikhs, there may be Jews, there may be Buddhists, there may be Hindus. So why let one religion have precedent over the rest of them? So you have two choices. If you're not going to just kind of prop up Christianity, either you have a different group pray every time you have a city council meeting, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, or you just cancel the prayer. You just move the prayer out. Well, that largely in a secular culture, they're moving the prayer out of the civil ceremonies because they don't want the controversy of what people might say if any group is allowed to pray at their events. But even so, that's a trend on how the culture is changing because when you're not looking at really 80 or 85 or 90% of the population as identifying with a religion, right? Then you have to keep an eye out on all the different kinds of people. So there's religious pluralism, there's political pluralism, there is sexual identity issues, gender issues now. The country is getting more and more plural and more afraid of offending. And so kind of opening it up to more and more groups to speak to it. So what contributes to this growing pluralism? Well, certainly immigration is a part of it. When you have somebody that's an immigrant, new faith systems, worldviews are introduced. So just on my street, if I can think about it, largely we have a number of agnostics. We have a Catholic. We have a Hindu. We have a Sikh. Just within the 10 or 12 families, just in our block. In Roseville, there was a beautiful church called St. John's. And St. John's moved and developed a new property they were on Main Street, one of the oldest churches in Roseville. Well, when they moved, guess who bought their building? A Sikh group. In fact, on a Sunday, literally over 1,000 Sikh families will gather at this former Christian church in Roseville. That's a huge swath. In all of Roseville schools, in 7th grade, they now teach a class on comparative religions. Well, why do they do that? They want their students to understand the belief systems of their neighbors because there's so many different religions that are represented even in Roseville. So immigration is a part of that. Urbanization, proximity, to live at peace. Again, you're rounding off the edges of your faith system. Technology, the world has gotten a lot smaller. We're aware of different viewpoints. Education is also a part of this. So this last trend has, again, we're looking at American culture as described by this kind of sociology of religion. In the last 100 years, there's a growing secularization. There's a growing privatization, and there is a growing trend of pluralism that we now can see in American culture. And hopefully these tools that I'm giving you helps you see your own culture and understand it better. So this is the third of 3. Please make sure you watch the 4th one, which is the video on the innovation of loneliness that's attached to the 2nd video here. Thanks.